In this game, I want to show you an example of how to teamfight with a bulky hero. I'm playing Tidehunter in this scenario, and with a bulky hero, I mean a hero that you might have a blink, but you don't really play to like initiate, you don't really play to deal damage or to catch heroes off guard. You just kind of play to tank up and to soak as much like attention and spells as you can. Another examples of these kind of heroes I think are Tidehunter. I think like Timbersaw to some extent. This hero deals damage, but at least in the early mid game you're so tanky that the enemy can't really go on you. There's also Underlord, there we have him. I think it's a very good example of like he has these long range nukes, but he's not really gonna like do that much. Maybe after a team fight, you know, he hits really hard, but in general he just builds like Guardian Greaves and tanky items, and he wants the enemy to go on him so that his carry can deal damage. The enemy have just taken Roche, or they're about to take Roche. No, they've just taken Roche, Ember has an Aegis, and they're running at our tower. And I'm telling my team, I think we can fight this, because I think I'm really tanky and it's really hard for them to dive me successfully under a tower. However, my Ravage is on a 30-second cooldown, so you don't, especially in 5v5 team fights, you really want to avoid taking them if one of your major team fight ultis is on cooldown. Sometimes maybe if I'm playing like Sand King and I think like, yeah, my Epicenter, maybe not like the easiest spell to get off, maybe not the highest value, you know, that's like okay. But if I'm playing like Doom or Tide or Batrider or these heroes, it's a lot better usually to avoid taking the fight until you can have your cooldown. So you can tell right now that I'm alone at this tower, but I know that all in my team have TPs. All other times when you do this bait place, it's really good just to press Alt, check, like you can do a quick check, like we all have TPs. You can check the green little markers. We all have our ultimates, you know, we have Finscript, Scythe, Loon ulti. It's like, I'm like, alright, good, we're ready to fight. I'm telling my team, be ready, they're gonna jump me top, they're gonna go me top. And even though like they're not quite in position, I'm like confident enough that this is gonna work out. If you're not sure, and if you're not maybe as confident in how tanky you are, it's always better to play a little bit safer. Sometimes, and it happens to me as well, you become overconfident because you feel like, oh, I bought all these tanky items, I'm like unkillable. But it turns out that 5 heroes can probably still kill you anyway. You know, like Hood, 30% magic resist. Let's say I have 50% magic resist. That just means they have to throw like twice as many spells, or they have to do like, it takes them twice as long to kill me. But if they're 5 people and it takes them 2 seconds to kill me normally, well, now it's probably only gonna take them 4 or 5 seconds instead. So you kind of have to respect like that you're never really unkillable. They start diving me. You can see already that they're throwing a lot of spells. Grimstroke has used his silence and his nuke. I managed to kill the silence. That's really big. It's like one of his better spells against me. Ember using all of his spells, low on mana, you know, like Treant running in, showing his position. It's very good that like their supports are out of position. In a game like maybe when you have like a Queen of Pain or a Storm Spirit, these heroes that don't really want to initiate, but they want to make sure they can jump the enemy's backline and enemies like easy targets. It's really good if you can make them show and make them go on you, so they can then find an easy target. They're never gonna want to jump in blind, so it's important that you like play in a way to enable your other heroes. You can see that they go on me. I'm like very low, but I ravage. I think I ravage their entire team, and at this point, the fight is just like clearly pretty much over. Of course, in this game, this is like a perfect scenario, and my team is all ready, and everyone TPs in. And sometimes, I guess this is not going to happen in your ranked games. That people like respond and they're like ready to fight, and everyone is like communicating and playing like a team. So this can sometimes backfire. I know it happens in my ranked games as well, that I call for a bait and I expect people to TP, and then somebody's not listening or somebody has me muted, and it's like very, very annoying. But then I think you kind of have to adapt, and instead of like yelling at your team, you have to tell them like, next time like please listen to me, or maybe if you really think they're not gonna like bother or nobody's responding, you kind of just need to not make this kind of plays where you're like expecting your team to follow you up. I think this probably works better when you're playing with friends or like people that you feel like they're listening to you when you're talking. However, when it's not like near a tower and you're not like baiting the scenario that you're alone, I think this is like how you want to position yourself in most team fights when you play these heroes. You always want to play in front. You want to try and make sure that you stay close to the heroes, either that you want to protect or that the heroes that you know are going to want to deal damage. So I know, like for example, my Ankle Smash reduces their attack damage. I want to stay near Lycan and all his minions. That's like kind of my goal. In this example, I want to talk to you about scenarios when you're getting ignored and how you want to approach it. I'm like very far ahead. I'm very tanky. I have a lot of items. I know that like probably they're not going to go on me, or probably they're going to ignore me. they've learned their lesson. Also, they're very far behind, so in these scenarios, it's like really hard for them to go on you. I want to talk to you about like your mindset and what it should be. You should try and have like a goal in every team fight. And my goal is to follow the Lycan around, to stop him and all his minions. But in order for me to do that, I need to like try and think what he's gonna do, right? So I don't have a blink or anything. If I am like all the way over here, it's really, really hard for me to catch him. He's gonna run after a support who's like gonna run away, and then I need to like run after him all the time. So I know that he's gonna wanna kill my Rubik and my Bane. Even in this scenario, they're already going on the Bane. You can see that right here, I start running towards this guy. This guy is gonna form, and I know like he's gonna go for my team. So what you wanna do is you kind of wanna run to your back line, or you wanna run like back to your team to make sure that you're always playing together as like a ball. Very hard for the enemy to run into when you play this kind of heroes, like Underlord and Tide. If they group up, you get like a big Ravage, you get a big Root. And if you know they want to go for your supports, the supports can't really run to you because they're obviously getting gone on. They're just gonna like panic and run away. You need to make sure that you're either near them or that you get to them like very, very quickly in order to save them. Especially when you have these heroes like Oracle, Shadow Demon, you know, these like very far backline heroes that have a save. I can almost guarantee you that if this hero never die in a team fight, like you're gonna win it, because they're just gonna keep saving your team. They're gonna keep like disabling the enemy and have like a lot of impact. Problem with those heroes is obviously they're very squishy. They have a very hard time like saving themselves. So it's very important that you also understand like which heroes in your team they're gonna go for, and you try and position accordingly. Other times when you're playing heroes with a blink, or you're playing heroes that wants to catch, like maybe if I'm playing Batrider or Doom, I'm not really gonna wanna save my supports because I wanna go on the enemy carry instead, and that's like higher impact. But I can't do that like with Tidehunter, I can't really do that with Underlord, so I just make sure that I save my own teammates instead. When you're playing a teamfight initiator in the late game, or like any kind of like frontline initiator with a blink, especially in a scenario like this, when you know that you wanna force a fight and you know the enemy are outnumbered, I think you should just make sure that you're in position together with whatever hero is pushing, and kind of jump whatever hero is showing, like right away. When you have like this huge of a number advantage, it doesn't really matter that much how your initiation looks like, as long as it's like, as long as you can start a fight, as long as it just happens. Sometimes when you get an opportunity, you don't really dare to go for it because you haven't fought it through beforehand. But if you have this mindset of knowing like, before it happens, I'm deciding like, okay, if this guy shows, do I want to jump? Like if I stun a guy that shows here, is my team gonna go on him, or is my team like way too far back and they can't go on him? Sometimes you have to look on the minimap, and sometimes you just have to like trust that if we're pushing the tower, obviously they're like in range. So if you watch my fog here, I'm like saying to my team, I'm gonna jump if somebody defends. I know that the Puck and Snapfire are dead, and I also know that we're like very strong and we feel very strong. So as soon as he shows, I just blink and stun. Luckily, the Earth Spirit also gets caught, but the point is like to kind of hide, and then just as soon as something comes, you just go and like smack him right away. I think like in the late game, especially when you team fight, you really want to make sure that you have a plan and that you thought it through beforehand. In the moment, there's not going to be any time for you to make a lot of these like critical decisions. And if you spend a lot of time like in the team fight thinking, it's like very hard to think and play at the same time. You're probably gonna run around or like AFK a little bit if you're always thinking like, oh, like what hero do I want to go on? Or like, oh, this anti-mage has a BKB. You're like, oh shit, I can't go on him, you know? You think about these things beforehand. You try and click their inventories. You like try and make sure to think about your team as well. Like which heroes do I have to follow up with me? Which heroes are gonna do damage? You make sure that they're close to you. It's very easy for you to just go when the moment presents itself, instead of having to like doubt yourself, or instead of having to like think it through, and then the moment is going to be gone. So it's very important that you're like swift and that you stick to your decision and that you're like confident in it. And I think if you manage to do this and manage to always find initiation at the right time, it doesn't matter that much if it's not maybe the right target or if it's not the right hero, because you already know that it's going to be good. So you don't like, I guess you don't doubt yourself. I think it's the most important thing when you're trying to initiate, especially for team fights. In this game, I want to show you an example of a late game team fight that I played in a ranked game. For me, looking at like the enemy heroes and my items, I think the only hero that's really gonna like one-shot me or be able to kill me if they jump me is the Legion Commander with a duel. He just respawned over here. He is dead. So I can see that he just respawned, kind of, and he's probably not like ready to set up right away. Like over here, they're not like in our jungle, so I know that this area is going to be safe, and I know they're not smoking to us. But I do think that because Roche is going to be up, and this is like what both teams are playing around, I know that probably they have a lot of heroes out mid. So I know, like, if I were to go out and push this wave, because it's like an important part of the map, it's important for vision and like map control, I can guess that they're probably like heroes set up. In this scenario, they're even all the way over here smoked, so they're like looking for the hero that like plays alone around mid, that's about to push out mid. I'm playing on this side, which is a little bit safer. We have a ward, I have a gem. I don't think like I'm gonna get jumped here. But before I do walk out and before I do poke, it's very important in scenarios like this that you tell your team you're gonna bait. And I think especially in your ranked games or in lower tier games, I would say pretty much only in like very high tier competitive games, as soon as you show, you're not gonna get jumped. Like only if you know you're playing against like really good people, you're playing really like high tier Dota, you're not gonna get jumped like the second that you show. Somebody's gonna be like just out of range, or they have to run over, maybe they're forming a creep camp, like they're not gonna be super ready. So it's really good when you bait that you like poke a little bit and then you go back right away. You can tell by the enemy team's reaction that they really want to jump me and they really want to kill me, but I know that I have Yules that dispels dust, and I know that I have a gem, so I will see if they have any sentries. Unfortunately, Enchantress has a gem, and I don't know about this, so I think this is like a little bit risky because of the gem. But for me, in my mind at least here, I'm invisible, and I know they will have to place down a sentry, and I know that the position 5 player, most of the time, is not going to be like next to his team, to the people that are blinking in. So playing a hero like Sanking, or maybe if you have a Shadow Blade, or if you're like some other type of hero that has escapes, it's important to understand that their team, even if they have initiators with a blink like Legion, the other heroes are not going to be able to jump you instantly. So you have to like only respect the hero that you're scared of, kind of. And even if Enchantress and Clinks, like the Hex would be able to kill me, they don't have blinks, and I see that he's not there, so I know like he's not going to be able to initiate on me, only the Legion Commander. I tell my team right away, like, I'm going to bait mid, come over. Now this draw is a little bit slow, and he went to farm top instead of coming mid, so that's like kind of unfortunate for me. Otherwise, I think right now it would have been a perfect scenario for him to start shooting this Legion. You know, he's used his blink, blade mail, like, at least it's on cooldown. They just start running away instead. This was not really what I wanted to happen. But right now, what you can do in a lot of these scenarios is that it's better to go back and try and find a new jump and to slow down a little bit, instead of like chasing and thinking like, oh, he doesn't have blade mail, or oh, they reveal themselves, you know, Dark Willow uses ultimate, whatever. It's not like super big cooldowns. It's not enough, just that you know where they are, or that they've used like some small spells. Only if they use major teamfight ultimates, or if somebody is dead, you want to like chase into the enemy team. Team fighting is always about like playing to survive and like poking and kiting. If you give yourselves up very easily and you die very easily, it's not going to take the enemy like a lot of positioning or a lot of effort and spells to kill you. It's way more important that you always go back and forth, you always poke, you always play not to die instead of playing to like kill the enemy. Another thing to think about is using like angles and vision. I think in this scenario we're not smoked, but a lot of the times when you take team fight, it's going to be 5v5, so it's really important that you win them and you come from like a good angle and a good positioning. So taking high grounds and using high grounds can be really good. You can see that both teams are kind of like sitting on the high ground. Enchantress is in the low ground, but she also doesn't mind getting gone on. Really tanky with the Shaco and the ultimate, so she knows like if we go on him, it's going to be good. I'm sitting up here where they should have no vision of me. He just places a ward. But I also know that if they have a ward like back here, that it's not going to see me, and I know that because I had the gem, they don't have any ward here. So I like play around the fact that, okay, like in this line, pretty much, I know that they have no vision, so if I walk like this, they're not going to see me. That's also the strength of having a gem, but a lot of the times you're not going to have it, so then you need to play a little bit safer. You can see because of this, the Clinks, who thinks that we're sitting up here, starts running up this hill, but because I've already went around and I thought like, I think I can get a good jump from this angle. I think if we come from behind, they're not going to expect it. Like in a competitive game, I would say that probably if we want to do this, that we would smoke behind with a lot of people, and I would be like, we can kill them here. But in a ranked game, it can be a little bit harder to coordinate these things and make it happen fast. So it's usually better to just like poke a little bit on your own and to play a little bit slower and not try and do this like really fancy moves where like, oh, we're gonna smoke around and come from like a weird angle as 5, and then like somebody's gonna slack behind, or they're gonna want to farm, or like it's better to just try and find it on your own. And you see that this guy just runs in, and I'm like perfectly in position, and I make sure that I have follow-up. Another thing when you initiate team fights, I would say that for like ganking people as well, it's really, really important that you have a guy that can follow up on your stun. I know that this Lina is in range. You can look right here that when I walk down, the Lina walks down with me because she knows that whatever I stun, she wants to be in range for. So we're both being smart. A lot of the times, unfortunately, people are not smart, so, or they try to be, but they don't manage to be. So you need to kind of have responsibility yourself for the heroes that wants to follow up, if they're in range or not. If this Lina was where the Drow is standing, and I stun this Clinks, it would do absolutely nothing. Like, my stun deals 280 damage, he has 5000 HP. Like, I would tickle him, right? But because the Lina is in range, it's like a good initiation. And then he gets stunned again, he gets shot, then the Drow can follow up, he's stuck in the Sprout, you know, like, this is a really good start to our team fight. So even though he has 5000 life, he's pretty much dead, we chase him down. And in my opinion, this is like what a perfect initiation looks like. Nobody in our team gets gone on while doing damage to him. They're not like counter-initiating. Unfortunately, the Drow is in a little bit weird position, so she gets dueled and I think she dies. But like, that's more, I would say that's more on him, like standing up here instead of going together with the team, and less on you as an initiator. So people are not going to play perfect, of course, but if you believe that you did like an initiation that was good and that you had follow-up, I think you should still like be confident to keep doing it, and not just because your carry maybe did a bad play and died. In a fight like this as well, usually when I stun in and sandstorm here, I would run away right away. I would like instantly, I would just go back and be like, I'm gonna wait until I have a new stun so I can epicenter and blink in and stun a lot of people. Now there's a couple reasons why I don't do this. First of all, I have the gem, so I want to make sure that I stay on Clinks when he misses away. That's like the primary reason. Second of all, I don't think that I'm dying in the fights. I think that Clinks is already out. The Legion, if he goes on me, I don't think he's like strong enough to kill me. I have 3000 life and a halberd. A lot of the time when you play teamfights, you need to play accordingly to your items. If I would, instead of having like halberd, veil, and Yules, if I would have like Ags and a force staff, you know, I would be a lot squishier, and then I would instead play on like the big epicenter and like resetting myself out and going back in again. Because I have more like escape items and a little bit tankier items, I would rather like be in the fight with the gem and make sure that I can like stun in again. I see also that the fight is like moving upwards, that my Drow is getting gone on. So if I'm running away from the fight, that would mean I have to run over here, and I would be really, really, really far away and probably not be able to stun these people. So sometimes as well, if you're baiting for this teamfight ultimate, maybe you're playing Magnus or Enigma, and you're resetting, it can be like very hard for you to go back into the fight. So sometimes it's also better to run into the fight if they're not going on you. It can be very like tricky to determine, but especially if they're going on your carry, for example, they're gonna keep like chasing your carry and you wanna help them out. So it can be better like to just go into the fight if you think you're not gonna die, of course, and do it that way. You can see as well from this team fight that I'm not really taking any damage, you know, they're not really going on me. So in this scenario it's fine, but a lot of the time when you do stun in and you play initiators, the enemy is gonna go on you, and then it's a better idea to like go back. But that's a very like case by case basis. And usually you can kind of learn from the last team fight, like, oh, I just stunned in and died. I'm going to try next team fight to play a lot safer and to make sure that after I stun, I run away right away. Here I want to show you a quick example of what a bad initiation looks like and why it happens. I'm playing Sand King and we've killed their carry and their offlaner, and we want to go high ground because we're a lot stronger than the enemy. So I think to myself, like, I'm going to jump right away, whatever shows. And I think this is not necessarily a bad thing, because we're overpowering them with numbers. Problem is Legion buys back, which means that they now have a counter-initiator. Beforehand, if I jump in, there's not really any hero that's going to kill me. Like Dark Willow can maybe combo me, but I have a Yule, so I'll get out of that. I'm not really in danger. Now this Legion has come back, and in my opinion, he's like their counter-initiator. And what I mean by that is when you go in and you start a team fight, or if the enemy will go in and they will start a team fight, then I will be the counter-initiator. It's like the hero that's going to respond right away to try and either go on your backline to stop them from dealing damage or to kill you when you've gone in. So in a position like this, if I were to just blink in and stun this invoker and I will get dueled, I will probably die. Maybe it will still be a good fight because all of our other heroes will be alive, but it's important to understand like that is probably what's going to happen, or that is like what might happen when I go in. I'll show you really quick that the drow starts hitting the tower, and we're getting tower damage, right? And we're very happy because they don't really think they can go on the drow with the Legion. He's like playing safe. We're probably gonna get this tower, and we might even end up getting the Rex. Then I do a very stupid thing, and I blink in and stun this Invoker because I think that he's out of position. Problem is my drow is very far back, so she has like no way of dealing damage during the stun. And I think an even bigger problem is that my Lina is really, really far back for some reason, so that I have no like follow-up to my stun. And because of this, without having any follow-up, the Invoker can very quickly just, well, he gets saved in this scenario, but he can very quickly just BKB and run away. And it also puts my drow in a very awkward position where, because the Lina is not following up, he feels like he has to run up and deal damage, which ends up like with him getting dueled right away, because his positioning is both a lot more forward and also because I don't have any way of counter-initiating now. So sometimes when you play team fights, it's like better to just be the counter-initiator or to at least wait for a better moment, because me blinking and stunning really like accomplishes nothing. It is a little bit of damage, but nobody is there to follow up and nobody can do any damage. So the drow dies and like we're very sad. We end up getting chased down, and you can see that this one like small little mistake is gonna lead to like 4 of us dying, the enemy taking a lot of map control and like pushing our base and eventually getting our Rex. So even though you think it's like a very small thing, it's also really, really important, especially in late game scenarios where most of the team fights happen, that you try and not make bad initiations. It's better not to initiate and better to play it safer in team fights than to force a fight that's bad.